and outside. We are united here in Artsakh. We are ready to fight for our rights. People who have lost everything, have lost their jobs, the sources of earnings, and they will try to do something in order to restore somehow, get together all the stock of the food and divide it equally and leave till it ends. That's one way, or the whole world has to understand that this is a serious struggle for life, for existence, and that support that we demand. We say that it's not just for Artsakh; it's much deeper. And I'm simply trying to say that this is not just fighting the crisis or overcoming the crisis or the blockade. It's a struggle for all of us, and it's the hardest struggle. We have the right to live on our soil with our laws and values, and we are going to do everything for that. And we're looking in different directions, doing the work in the government and with the people, and it's much harder for us now than you can see. Obviously, it's for our future. It's the existence of Armenians in Artsakh. We will overcome that because I can see the spirit, the strength in my compatriots here and in Artsakh. And I'd like to once again thank all those who have not been indifferent. We have a situation. It is one more time that we have to stand up for our rights. Thank you, Mr. Vartanyan, for presenting this very difficult situation to the whole world. A lot of work has been done by the journalists as well, and I'd like to thank everyone who's been with us in Yerevan and in the world covering these events. And of course, I'd like to thank, most importantly, the journalists in Artsakh and Artsakh Public TV, colleagues of ours who are here in the studio, who have really taken that load on their shoulders to present the situation to the whole world, the situation that persists here in Artsakh. After a short video summing this up, we'll give the opportunity to speak to our international colleagues and Armenian journalists who are in Artsakh and in Armenia and in Stepanakert. Once again, those journalists who have joined us on Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. There's raise hand opportunity there, and we will give you the floor and you will join the discussion and ask questions to the main participants of this discussion. So in this very difficult struggle, what happens on the media platforms in Stepanakert? Since the 12th of December, from the moment the Lachin Corridor was blocked for 30 days, we've been fighting also on the media platforms. The blockade of the road as such is also an information blockade, as it was supposed to be. In order to cover the situation, Azerbaijan has sent tens of different journalists in order to cover the situation. Of course, it's very biased what they say, and how they present it, because they do not allow the world to understand what the real situation is. From the first day, in order to prevent that, in public TV of Artsakh, 24/7 work has been done for this purpose. From the first days of the blockade, the public TV of Artsakh initiated special live broadcasts in a framework of a special project that would also present the information that the operational staff had. They are providing the information from the first source, and they are very, very loaded. That they present over 100 different reports, split families, people who haven't surrendered, who have continued their life and work in Artsakh. Right on the first day of the blockade, this multimedia online unified platform was established with access granted to hundreds of media outlets in the world, in Armenia and Artsakh as well, in order to provide an everyday 24/7 regime, everything that was happening in Artsakh, just human stories, where presented. The information blockade was broken, and the voice of Artsakh was heard in the whole world. We have worked together with international renowned media outlets, organized interviews, made videos, published hundreds of articles, presented the information in all possible forms in order to tell the people what happens in Artsakh, and also the steps the governments have taken in order to overcome the situation. Yes, let's continue. Yerevan. Yes, after this introduction, I suppose the journalists who have followed us understand better what the situation is a month after Artsakh is in blockade. So if there are questions, you can ask your questions now. Of course, try to stay around the main topic. That's the blockade of Artsakh. If there's any time left after, we might try to discuss other questions too. Maybe we can give the floor to one Armenian media and one foreign media in turn. Please approach the mic in the room, introduce yourself, and also tell who you address your question to. David Levonyan, A1+. My question is addressed to State Minister Ruben Vartanyan. Mr. Vartanyan, you said that Armenia would not react duly as you would expect it to react to the situation in Artsakh. What do you expect from Armenia in that case? Well, you see, there are a number of serious problems we're having. First is that people who live in Armenia, they do not fully understand what blockade means. And we need the people to understand what it means to be under blockade. Second, we have NGOs in Armenia who can start talking to different international organizations, telling them, reporting the human rights violations in Artsakh. It's not only for us to do that, but those in Armenia can also do that. Well, we know that about 400,000 people are from Artsakh. And Artsakh is their homeland, and I'm sure they're concerned about what happens in Artsakh. But the rallies in different areas showed that people are not that interested. Let me tell you once again, 120,000 citizens of Armenia who live in Artsakh, the Artsakhtsis, the citizens of Artsakh, are in such a situation. I guess the reaction from NGOs, the government, the parliament has to be stronger, because, well, it's very difficult to make your voice heard in the world today. And in this respect, the Armenian diaspora and Armenian people, Armenian government have to react differently. I mean, this is not just a regular situation. It's obviously a crisis and an emergency. Well, I mean, that's clear. What do you expect from the Armenian government? Well, the government of Armenia has already announced what they are going to be doing. They support financially, they support legally, and they tell us that that's everything they can do. So it doesn't matter what we expect from them, essentially, because they have told us what they can do. And we're grateful for that. However, in this situation, we apparently need more than what the Armenian government can offer. Okay, thank you.
So we'll limit the questions from Armenian colleagues and give the floor to Zoom international colleagues. Please introduce yourself, put on the video if possible. I'm addressing this to Zoom colleagues, and address the question either in Yerevan or Stepanakert. Each has a go at one question. May I ask a question? Kirill Krivosheyev. I would like to address the question to Mr. Vartanyan. Nikol Pashinyan made a statement that the authorities of the Republic of Artsakh should not take action that could result in a response from them. Or lead to military response thereby. Nikol Pashinyan claims from Yerevan that you should not let the adversary understand that Stepanakert refuses dialogue. And dialogue between Stepanakert and Baku, as far as I know, was I will take that question. To begin with, we should understand that Azeris were using the salami tactics, cutting off a sliver day after day, violating on a daily basis the statement of November 9. Although there was an agreement about each of the parties remaining on their side of the line of contact. In this respect, we observe a systemic, persistent changes in the situation. In order for a dialogue to take place, we mentioned that we are ready for dialogue, but not in the regime of piecemeal handing over and surrendering that which had been agreed not to be touched, but on conditions which make it possible between two neighbors. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan refuses. Every question about the dialogue focuses on a technical level. There was no willingness to address and resolve the political issue which we're facing. As for the resignation of certain officials, that's the decision of the president. And in this situation, forming a team in conditions of a blockade as requiring unorthodox steps that bring together everyone into a single team. The authorities of the Republic and the people have taken the decision. We're fighting for our right to live on our native land. We're fighting for our right to live by our own laws. This means a very strict positioning, which is different from Armenia's positioning and the Armenia's authorities' position. We raised this at the Security Council session, this decision. We are for a dialogue. But political rather than technical, what's the dimension of the payment, tarmac, or whatever, which is what Azerbaijan insisted on. Thank you. There is a question from Stepanakert as well. Artsakh journalists are here in Stepanakert, please. Artsakh Public TV, Armine Petrosyan. I address the question to State Minister Ruben Vartanyan. Mr. Vartanyan, by the end of December, the Kashan mine was temporarily suspended its operation to invite international environmental experts to come up with an expert assessment. What has followed suit? Has there been any response from international experts or not? We have addressed a letter to the UN and its environmental agencies, as well as several other international organizations, stating that having witnessed the hearsay about the situation, we nevertheless maintain state-of-the-art mining operations in this country. And that said, we're really willing to receive internationally renowned environmental experts in our country. The readiness and willingness is there, and the authorities have expressed their openness, but the road is closed, and It makes it redundant. Everything is at a standstill now. We have responses by experts that they're ready and willing to come visit Artsakh and to do their assessment. But we have received the Azeri position that they will not let anyone in except for state-sponsored experts of Azerbaijan. This explicitly makes it clear that the issue is not about environmental concerns, but is on a completely different plane. Thank you. Let's bounce back to Yerevan. Anna? We're talking with Artsakh, who's been in a blockade for over a month, so some technical glitches are inevitable. About AM, this question is for Mr. Vartanyan about your following statement. The blockade is not 100%. We have a lifeline which allows to bring in a little bit of medication and food. It's no big secret, I believe, that the state of Azerbaijan analyzes every statement from the Armenian side and draws its conclusions. This is not only in their apparent in their domestic policies, but also in foreign diplomacy. So could you comment on your own statement from this point of view? They have counted the number of cars that have entered Artsakh over the month, both through the Russian peacekeepers and the Red Cross, which demonstrated that the Russian peacekeepers and Red Cross vehicles can make it through. Which numbers 400 trucks. If you compare it with how much food is required for 2,000 people, I want to reiterate that this is less than a day's traffic of trucks which we had before the blockade. When I refer to lifeline, that's what I was referring to. Even in the heaviest blockade of Leningrad, they had a lifeline, but we're talking negligible volumes. So I want to reiterate that the blockade is not a sarcophagus of Chernobyl that is airtight. There is some fuel, pharmaceuticals, and food that are all in great scarcity. People in their daily lives have been deprived of access. So it was clear from my statement that it displayed the situation as is. Thank you. Let's now allow our Zoom colleagues to ask their questions. If possible, a question. I am Liza Rozovskaya. I'm employed in Haaretz Daily. Question for Mr. Vartanyan. How do you see the role of Russia in this crisis? As far as I understand, you have met in particular with Mr. Volkov in charge, commander of the peacekeeping contingent. Several weeks ago, he asked for some time to address and resolve the problem. It's been a month since the problem has not yet been resolved. Do you think that Russia is doing everything within its powers in this situation? What else do you expect from it? That's the first question. And the second question is of statistical nature. The Israeli side claims that today in Artsakh, there's not more than 35,000 Armenians remaining in Artsakh. Do you have your own statistics about the number of people right now living in Artsakh? Thank you. The Minister of Foreign Affairs will answer the first question, and I will take the statistics part of the question. At the rally, which lends itself to being estimated easily, there were more than 50,000 people. Looking at density of the people in the square, give or take, it's very difficult in a blocked republic to have 35,000 people living when 50,000 turn up at a rally. We have 12,000 gift sets for kids, which Santa failed to give to them because those presents have been blocked. We have about 30,000 kids in schools and young people in universities. Children under maturity and under age are
12,000. All of these claims by Azerbaijan are easily quashed by elementary calculations and estimates. Yes, we have a clear understanding that today in the territory of Blocked Republic of Artsakh, we have about 120,000 people living, give or take small amounts that have. There's not only citizens of Artsakh, but also citizens of Armenia who came for employment or left. So we're talking in the vicinity of 120,000 people. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yerevan, will take the next question. Armenian or Russian? Armenian. As for the first question, we may claim here that the presence of the Russian peacekeepers is one of the main safeguards and guarantees that constrains the Turkish Azeri tandem to complete their plans with respect to Artsakh, in particular, depopulating the Armenian, leading Artsakh of Armenians. At the same time, in this particular situation, the principal objective pursued by Azerbaijan is in raising a wave of discontent among Armenian population against the Russian peacekeepers. This is one of the important considerations. At the same time, Azerbaijan is trying in every way possible to impair the reputation, the operations of the Russian peacekeepers. In this situation, considering that the Azeri side is trying in every way to impede with the supply of food, medicals, imports thereof into Artsakh. The role of the Russian peacekeepers has acquired an important role also in the sense that they should be actively involved in ensuring the necessary volume of both food supplies as well as medication be imported to Artsakh through their mediation. That's it in a nutshell, by way of answering your question. BBC now. We also have, you have to understand that the Israelis are using quote unquote environmentalists who have blocked the road. We understand and we see how there is by various means, unfortunately, in very ugly way treat the Russian peacekeepers and how they mock them and provoke them in every way in order to get a forceful response. The restrictions on the Russian peacekeepers. We understand that this situation cannot be resolved by arms or force, but we have great expectations from the Russian state, which has its role in all of this, to get more actively involved in resolving these issues, because genuinely 120,000 people are facing a grave crisis. And in this respect, we would expect more active political participation of Russia. This is not peacekeepers per se, in as much Moscow to get involved. Let's give the floor to Stepanakert and Emil Kumyan. And she just turned off her mic. What expectations do you have from the diaspora, Mr. Vartanyan? It's not only me answering the questions. There is David Vartanyan and Yerevan Stepanyan. I apologize. Let me repeat the question. What are your expectations from the diaspora, Mr. Vartanyan? I would like not only me to answer this question, but also Artak Beglarian, Georgi Stepanyan. we organize various events we think are important in order for the diaspora to understand that the situation in Artsakh is not only vital for those living in Artsakh, but it's important for all Armenians throughout the world. I've mentioned this many times. Involvement of the diaspora here, both in various formats, helping to disseminate the information, exercising diplomatic pressure in their host countries. Eventually, we know that the Azeri elite goes to study and vacation in various states, and if they're sanctioned by those states, not as a state but as individuals, a lot may change. I think we should use various channels and means. This is not only Artsakh and Azerbaijan relations, but also the Armenian world. It should demonstrate that such behavior will not be tolerated in civilized countries, and in this respect, pressure should be exerted and the behavior should change both in Artsakh, Armenia, and elsewhere in the world. There should be pressure exerted, saying that it's impermissible to display such behavior against people, against children. This is not only court cases, but also any other pressure. I call upon people who have contacts with Azeri leadership at various forums not to shake their hands simply because they keep kids in dire straits in winter. Does everyone has anything to fill in at this point?
Well, it's obviously necessary to add that the diaspora involvement is very important. It's a resource a few countries have in the world, few nations have, and we have it, fortunately, and obviously need to make use of it, of the diaspora. I suppose Mr. Vartanian clearly told us what function may the diaspora carry, and let me simply add that our compatriots in the diaspora have to demand this from their governments. Respective actions are taken by the governments of the countries where Armenian diaspora exists, so that this criminal policy of ethnic cleansing by Azerbaijan gets the respective reaction and response. It's also about sanctions, not just international sanctions, but general sanctions. Different countries should apparently revisit their relations with Azerbaijan, and that's where diaspora is going to play a big role. And of course, the human rights organizations. There are a number of diaspora human rights organizations that carry these functions too. So I expect, as the human rights defender, that these organizations are going to be involved too. Then we have a question from the international media on the Zoom platform, and then we'll come back to the Armenian media. I'll ask the participant who's raised his hand to turn on the mic. Anna, would you please repeat the question? We have a representative of an international media outlet on Zoom. Please turn on the mic and ask the question.
Felix Light из агентства Reiter.
Hello.
Вопрос такой, опять к Рубену Варданяну. Вот, согласны ли вы с высказанием Никола Пашиняна?
With what Nikol Pashinyan said recently, that the Russian peacekeepers do not discharge their duties before the population of Nagorno-Karabakh properly. And the second question, if I may, you have said several times that the region is quite rich in food, but when will the point of no return come in this respect? I would not like to comment the statement by the politician you mentioned. I guess the only way here is to come and see what Russian peacekeepers do here, because words are futile. In fact, they have no value. It's a very difficult situation in which the Russian peacekeepers are at this moment, and we would really prefer an extension of their mandate and maybe a larger contingent of Russian peacekeepers. I mean, the situation would have obviously been much harder if the Russian peacekeepers were not here. So that's why it may be very easy to say things when you're not here. So we cooperate with the Russian peacekeepers with all forms possible so that we're able to find a way out. And that's the only way out, I may say, because to say that they're not doing what they have to do, it doesn't help us anyhow. It helps Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan dreams the day when Russian peacekeepers will leave, because Russian peacekeepers have to stay for decades to provide for the safety and security in the region. I'm sure that's the only way. Okay, very well. Next question. New Armenia, Manya Pogosyan. Mr. Vartanyan, I would like to know whether Stepanakert is in any form of negotiations with Azerbaijan on the issue of opening the blockade, or what are the requirements, what are the demands, I'm sorry, of Azerbaijan in this case, and which demands should be satisfied so that there is a kind of an agreement. Who do you rely on? Who does Stepanakert rely on? Armenia doesn't do anything, Russians don't do anything. I mean, maybe you have some illusions in regard to the international community. Well, as a state minister, I'm not part of any negotiations. I do not participate in any negotiations. Our relations are only with the Russian peacekeepers. I mean, I have no information about any negotiations process at this moment. That's what I can tell you. We are sure that this situation cannot be considered normal, neither by Armenia, nor the diaspora, nor any other international organization. And in this respect, we're sure that there has to be sufficient attention to this crisis. There has to be more attention, because this is unacceptable, and we do everything, obviously, so that respectively, so things happen in Armenia, and correct information is provided to our friends and compatriots in the United States and in Russia and other countries, and we do everything for these decisions to be taken on time in order to save lives, to guarantee the right to everyone to live in the homeland where they were born and when they want to live. So we understand the situation. It's a very hard situation, but that's what it is. That's what we have. Okay, Stepanakert. Aparaj AM, my question is addressed to Mr. Vartanyan again. Recently, you've mentioned the possibility of air transport. I just want to know whether it may fully replace the land road, specifically given the issue of power supply, for example, and gas supply. And if you cannot replace it, then why are we discussing it at all? Well, you know, historically, there have been cases where situations become very acute in different parts of the world. You know, the Western Berlin story, it was in blockade for quite a long period of time. And essentially, everything was brought in by planes, like coal, for example. I mean, the air transport has to provide for our right to live in a safe country. meaning the road and the bridge are the only ways. That's how it works. That's how it should work. And we're surrounded everywhere around, and that road that goes through Azerbaijan may always be damaged. So the international pressure has to be applied in a way so that people continuously get everything they need: food and drugs and water and anything else. So that's how it should work. I mean, there are two ways, and we have to try to provide for both. Safety, security, there has to be bridge, there has to be the road and the airlift, if necessary, I mean, without any impediments. That's what has to be provided. We have to fight for their rights, because we have those rights. Thank you, Mr. Minister. I have to apologize for my colleagues from Artsakh, because this were another, after this discussion, you will have the opportunity to discuss it with the state minister. So let's give the floor to our colleagues in Yerevan. Anna, the floor is yours. Please moderate this discussion, both for the international media outlets and our colleagues from Yerevan. Thank you. Let me also apologize, because we don't have a lot of time, and there are international media outlets that have they're in the line for asking the questions. Let us give them the floor. So one question from Yerevan now, and then we'll give the floor to our international colleagues. So, I mean, the press conference will continue. So, okay, we have participants on Zoom, please. Who want to ask questions?
Hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity to ask the question. I wanted to ask Mr. Vardanyan, where do you think the pressure should come from to resolve this crisis? Brussels, Washington, and on Russia. Do you think Russia currently is unable or unwilling to resolve this crisis? And if I may, the third question, I just wanted to clarify. There were reports that Artsakh security services were asking citizens not to report about the supplies, how much supplies are left. Is that true? And how much longer residents of Stepanakert can survive with the current supplies? Thank you very, very much.
Well, we can survive for quite a long period of time, but I mean, survive in what conditions? That's the question. Yes, we can still survive for quite a long period of time. The issue is when we will be able to overcome this situation. But of course, we are limited in a lot of things. And of course, we don't have all the food that we need. We have the food that will help us survive, not die. Okay, let me put it this way. So I suppose all those who consider themselves human have to be able to help us overcome this problem, because this is a conflict about the right to life. That's the human life we're talking about. I mean, it's not just a simple, a regular conflict. All people who are not indifferent, those who give importance to the right to life, have to fight together with us, exerting pressure, obviously. And Russia has a very big role here, but Russia, as all the other countries, should also take part in this, in resolving this, because Azerbaijan is not an island. I mean, they have an agreement with Europe, they supply gas, they organize different events internationally. Different international events are organized in Azerbaijan. Don't go to Azerbaijan. Ignore it so that they understand that they're doing something wrong. Don't let them come and have leisure in your countries and organize their leisure and in your countries or visit you for some business opportunities, for example. Okay, Yerevan. Civic AM, Nara Martirosyan. My question is addressed to Mr. Vartanyan. Mr. Vartanyan, in your primary statement, you said that Armenia is able to help Artsakh financially and legally. Well, then, what would be your assessment of the diplomatic work done by Armenia, and what is Armenia not doing in order to resolve the problem? If I'm not mistaken, the UN Security Council had to adopt the resolution offered by France related to the situation in Lachin Corridor, but apparently it all failed because what Russia suggested was not taken into account. What is your opinion about that? And if it was adopted, what would have changed? Okay, I suppose Mr. Ghazarian would have responded to this initially. I know work is being done, and we work with Mr. Kirakosyan and Mr. Mirzoyan, and there are working groups. They are doing their work. How effective they are is a different question, is another question. So there is work done here. Well, I would not like to speculate on what is being done, and if there is anything to add, Mr. Ghazarian. Mr. Vartanyan, you have mostly answered the question. I simply can add that all the levers have to be used by both Armenian states. Everyone has to try to do everything possible in order to solve this. As regards to the UN Security Council, this is not only for Armenia. I mean, it's not only related to Armenia. It's a question for the whole civilized order in the world to bring Azerbaijan to responsibility. Overcoming the impunity that they enjoy. That's a consequence of the impunity of Azerbaijan that we can witness today. So, and that's why we'll have to do our work. The second, I'm sorry, there's no possibility for a second question. There's a whole line of people who want to ask questions, please, in turn. Yerkir Media. I'm going to ask to address my question to the State Minister. Mr. Vartanyan, in your message yesterday, talking about the press conferences by Pashinyan and Aliyev, you said the only way out for Artsakh is struggle. Today, Pashinyan said that we should refrain from any political statements that would bring us to a dead end. And he said that we should not make, Nagorno-Karabakh should not make such statements that might result in military escalation. So may we infer from that the way out Pashinyan offers is get adapted, get accustomed, and satisfy the desires of Azerbaijan. We may also add the terms that he used recently, avoids from the phrase government of Nagorno-Karabakh. He says Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, representatives of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Is this acceptable? Are these terms acceptable for you? Do you agree with Pashinyan? You know, as regards the statements made during the session of the Security Council of Armenia yesterday, and essentially are quite eloquently presenting the general situation, and the National Assembly was also represented there, meaning the Parliament of Armenia. So I guess after everything that has been said, we simply have nothing to add. Okay, thank you. Next question. Past Info AM, addressed once again, the question is addressed to the State Minister of Artsakh. Mr. Vartanyan, in fact, last month showed that the international community doesn't want to act to exert any pressure on Azerbaijan in order to open the only road that links Armenia and Artsakh. Well, in such a situation, Armenia is essentially compelled to act according to some demands. So what Artsakh plans to do, and what are the main ways out from this situation? Well, in your opinion, you know, I was a soldier in 1980 in military service, and I remember when the Artsakh movement started in Yerevan. I was just nascent at the time, and I was there with my father, trying to understand what was happening, and there was uncertainty. No one knew what would happen at the time. Let me tell you, I'm sure that the rebirth of the Armenian spirit will take place in Artsakh. I mean, we will have to find a way from this uncertainty, and we'll have to fight and make the right decisions, and I'm sure we'll prevail, because the first step is, as they say, half of the way. So we will stay here, and that's the main decision. And it's been approved, such decision, I mean, by the government and the parliament and the people of Artsakh. I think that's the most important decision that's been made in the last month, that we will stay. We're staying. We have really felt that spirit behind that decision. It was not just the rally in Stepanakert. It's just everyday communication, everyday talking to people. They tell us that they will be staying. It's the hard way, but we have decided to go the hard way. And how is a question. Of course, we will do everything. We'll do everything to stay, to find the way out, to find a platform for negotiations, to find a solution without losing lives, more lives. But that's the way we're going. That's what we've decided. Thank you.
Late question, second Armenian TV channel addressed to the State Minister of Artsakh. Pashinyan has made multiple statements about Lachin Corridor being under the control of Russian peacekeepers by November 9 statement, and that the Russians have to open up the road. Armenia has nothing to do here. Do you share Pashinyan's position? He's the head of state, and he's made his opinion known in a statement. I may agree or disagree. I just take notice of this position and approach. Do you also find that the blocked road has to be opened up by Russian peacekeepers? The road should be opened up by the heads of state of normal countries and the respective societies. This is not only a statement. All people of the world should find it unacceptable that 120,000 people in the country should stay without energy, without medication, without food, without. I think this is important for all. So the world should understand that the innocent lives of children that are priceless. It's not. It's everybody's decision. You assume a burden if you are indifferent to this. Let's get back to Stepanakert with your permission. One more question from here, then we'll move back to you. Irina Herapetyan, Artsakh Public TV. I address the question to Mr. Vartanyan. In the wake of the war, when we returned to Artsakh, we clearly understood where it was that we came back to. We knew we had to be mentally prepared to withstand all the pressure. Today, de facto, it's been already announced that the Humanitarian Corridor linking Artsakh to Armenia has been shut down. This is the right time for us. having seen the anti-Armenian, anti-Azerbaijani policy of Azerbaijan, it was not possible to predict such a development. And if it was possible to predict it, do we have a plan, a program to guide us today? Thank you. The reason I'm with you here since September 2, because I was also feeling where we were headed. Unfortunately, it was obvious in every step of Azerbaijan. They wanted the situation to change, which was signed and agreed by the tripartite statement. It was clear they were violating it, escalating month over month. I do not know what was the plan before that, but I know the only option for their plans not to materialize is to fight against it. There's no other way. That's our plan. We say we disagree, we will not succumb to the position proposed to us by Azerbaijan. And based on that, our steps, whether in Yerevan, in Moscow, in New York, or elsewhere, which our friends have to help us with in Washington or LA for that matter, need to support us in this road, in this struggle. And we are the first and foremost to come up with this struggle. Before demanding anything from anyone else, we are the ones to, I'll be open and frank about this. This is important for us and for our Artsaksis. Our position that we will put up a fight gives us the strength to demand it from others. When our position is uncertain, then we are not eligible. If we say it's not that bad, and if we erode our position, when we say we want to remain independent and decide on our own lives and live the way our laws and values tell us, that immediately elicits the proper response. What transpired on October 30, October 3, and a few months ago, all of this has led to the people understanding. Deferring this decision is no longer viable. We have to decide this way or other. These steps have led to the blockade because the opposing party understood people have ended up in a situation when they say we're not ready to follow the path you've charted. We're not going to submit to Azerbaijan. This led to the escalation of the situation. The situation is grave. That is the way, and I'm certain that we will solicit the proper response from the rest of the world. We've clearly stated our position because of that. Thank you. If there are no more questions from here, let's once again give the floor to Yerevan Anna. Thank you, Naira Hovanesyan, Jogovurt Daily, Mr. Vartanyan. I would like to reflect on several statements you made live on air. You mentioned about a wealthy, affluent family going on vacation out of Artsakh, another incident where they succeeded in bringing in food and selling it for expensive prices in Artsakh without sharing it with the operational headquarters for more important purposes. What is the purpose of the statements you made? Don't you think that this may cause discord among the Artsaksis themselves, especially that the wealthy family you referred to did not live on vacation but took their kid to get medical treatment? Why do you make these statements? Thank you. When I moved to Artsakh, the first thing I felt is that people have this great sense of unfairness, injustice. This is because people feel that people enjoy different statuses facing the same challenges and jeopardy. If we want truly for all of us to fight, and which is the only way, that's only possible when you trust in each other, and you can trust in each other when you are fair, open, and frank. And I flagged those situations which unfortunately have taken place. It's 1, 2, or 3% of people who try to pursue a different type of life. When on December 31, the kids of a wealthy family drive back and forth and have the fuel for that, everybody knows that. It's common knowledge. If I'm not voicing it, it means either I prefer to accept the reality or I'm not standing by the people. I will fight against this, and I know that's the only path. some people claim, why are you raising this, speaking up, because that will not lead to change. I will never forget in the 90s when I came to Artsakh once, they asked, do we have racket? No, we've tried to set up a butchery, and they said you have to pay us kick-up. Why did you come to scare us? I fought in the war, my son was wounded, my nephew was lost his life. I've seen everything, I'm not scared. You should not be scared of talking about the shortfalls that we should fight against, about the half-truths, half-lies. Halfway measures have led to where we are now, both here and in Azerbaijan. Once we overcome that within ourselves, we will be able to overcome everything. I yesterday met with cabbies in Stepanakert. Trust me, they know much more than the national security or intelligence service or the prime ministers. You can tell lies to a cabbie. Either you have to be frank and gain their trust, or you should do nothing. That's my position. It pains me to speak about this, of course, but that's what we have. It's the reality that we have to struggle against and do everything for it not to repeat. One of the ways of fighting is to reinstall the feeling of shame. These people should not enjoy comfort in driving around when there is no fuel to save another child's life. If 1 or 2 minutes down the road we have no fuel for the ambulance to save kids, those who are driving their cars with top-up tanks because they are good boys, they will be ashamed and will feel bad because it's unacceptable in a blockade. I'm not ashamed for my words. Simonian Haraparak Daily, I addressed this question to Mr. Vartanyan. 2 days ago, the Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan in a press conference speaking about the subsequent fate destiny of Artsakh made several statements which, to put it mildly, do not instill any hope. In particular, for example, he said that financial assistance to Artsakh is the embodiment of the role of the guarantor of safety. If the rights are ensured in Artsakh, they may be in the inside Azerbaijan. Nikol Pashinyan says that the Artsakh authorities are in agreement with the authorities of Armenia. I want to ask Mr. Vartanyan, are you really in agreement with the statements of the Armenian Prime Minister, and can Artsakh negotiate face-to-face with Azerbaijan, considering that Armenia seems to have washed its hands of Artsakh? I've answered these questions in yesterday's Security Council session. The answer was given by the Security Council session yesterday, of which I am a member. This was a unanimous answer to all representatives by all involved members of our Security Council. We came up with that answer yesterday. I remind everyone this, we are short of time. This will be the last 3 questions, then back to Stepanakert. Thank you, Narek Irakosyan. Factor TV, Mr. Vartanyan, are you satisfied with Russian peacekeeping missions operations or not? If not, why? And have you discussed with the commander of their mission the opening issues around the opening of the Lachin Corridor? What are their comments that they've submitted to you? I think I already answered that question. Russian peacekeepers have a very limited mandate. They're small in numbers here, and we have to do everything in order to change the situation. It's one of the agenda of our security. Not only domestic consolidation and readiness for territorial defense, not only drawing the attention of the rest of the world to this, but also increase the number of Russian peacekeepers, strengthening their material and ensure their long-term presence, because that boils down to the most ultimate question of our security. Everything that contributes to this will go. will do everything in order for Russian peacekeepers to feel well here, to feel that they really have a significant role here, for Russian peacekeepers to feel that we, the Armenians, understand their plight, that we stand by them. It's not that we stand by them, it's they stand by us. So targeting Russians in this situation, if you understand that you are helping Azeris by doing it, put an end to it. Had it not been for Russian peacekeepers here, we wouldn't be here alive. Why are you repeating this question every time? To read them out? No, I'm not going to do that. I understand why they required it. Had they not been here, we wouldn't be here. That's why I'm saying we'll do everything for them to stay here, to become long-term, to get strengthened, and we remain standing by them. Don't you want to clarify whether you are satisfied with the operations of the Russian peacekeeping missions or not? I already answered your question. I didn't. Mr. Vardanyan, with your permission, I would like to say a few words. Please. Let's look at this way. Even if there are certain issues, this doesn't mean we're discussing them. We're discussing it with the command of the peacekeepers. But we mentioned it from early on, and Mr. Vardanyan reiterated that one of the most important objectives of this most recent provocation is exactly that. In order to wind up the Armenian population and incite a wave of discontent against the Russian peacekeepers in the Armenian population. So what do you think the Armenian side should do? Pour water on the mill of the Azeri provocation? Whenever issues emerge, various types of questions arise, we discuss them and we find solutions through those discussions. But I reiterate once again, to find a solution out of this situation is not only the task of the Russian peacekeepers. And Mr. Vardanyan also mentioned that, and we have to emphasize it once again. Those who consider themselves to be progressive and civilized, it's up to all of them. This is not just the issue of the Armenian people. It boils down to values. Thank you. We have a question on the Zoom platform. Please go ahead. Go ahead. Mr. Vardanyan, I'm Edvard Burmistr from Dozht TV station. I would like to ask a follow-up question on Russian peacekeepers. We heard you. We have heard several times you saying that Azerbaijan would only be glad if the Russian peacekeepers were to leave. But nevertheless, in the situation that came about, one has to accept reality. Do I understand you right? If we talk about the real steps, real solution, then the hope is still associated with exactly Russian peacekeepers. As of this point in time, yes, the Russian peacekeepers are the only constraint that prevents Azerbaijan from implementing its plans. So the presence of Russian peacekeepers is the most important safeguard of our security. Even in the curtailed and small numbers with the limited mandate and restricted possibilities to use force when the so-called activists are simply blocking the road. Now, last question, then Stepanakert will recap. I address this question to Ben Vardanyan. The incessant operation of the Lachin Corridor is guaranteed by November 9, 2020 tripartite statement, the provisions of which have been for the update time violated by Azerbaijan. This led to humanitarian crisis and destabilization in the region. Although notwithstanding the silence of the international community, the Artsakh continues with its democratic choice. What can Armenia do here, in your opinion, and on what basis Artsakh may attain independence? I'm not a politician, but I think we've several times already covered that question. Let's not waste time on getting back to it. If you're not satisfied with my answer, don't be indifferent. Don't look for a black cat in a dark room which is not there. just do whatever every one of you belongs, whatever you can for others not to implement or succeed with their plans, rather than sniping at each other, everything for all of us together to defend Artsakh. Whatever helps this issue, whatever helps us to overcome these difficulties, whatever, if something you do in peace with this objective, then it's treason. Those who fail to understand that their personal political partisan issues are more important and overweigh the issue of Artsakh, to refrain from it. I think right on this cue, we should now give the floor to Stepanakert to recap this new format of a discussion which we succeeded in with our Armenian colleagues. I thank the speakers, the keynotes in Yerevan and Stepanakert. Thank you. I just ended up in Artsakh as a journalist, not incidentally, of course. I just moved to Artsakh with the same purpose, to work, to stand by the people, well understanding that this is where we need to start from and why not continue our struggle. I have two sons who live in Armenia, and I would like them to continue to live in Armenia. It's a fantastic ambiance here, and we're trying to convey some of this ambiance to you there. What we started doing together from the first day of blockade, ensuring informational flows out of Artsakh to Yerevan and onwards to the world. Let's continue with that. I thank everyone who genuinely reflected on this, used our material. We'll continue this cooperation for the sole purpose to make our voice heard in the world. We have a lot of important things to do for this. Let me just once again remind of the events as they unfolded since December 12th. Eric Antaranyan from Stepanakert in Yerevan pavilion. It was Israelian, and we were joined by over Zoom by several international colleagues. Thanks, everyone. One month in a blockade. Azeris blockade Gori Stepanakert road. They disconnect the gas supply from Armenia to Artsakh. Operational management headquarters headed by the state minister are established. Petrol and diesel fuel sales are restricted. Gas supply restored to Artsakh. Protest actions in front of the UN headquarters in Yerevan. Gravely sick patients moved to Yerevan. UN Security Council ad hoc session condemns the blockade. Artsakh's march trying to approach those who blocked the road. Pan-national rally at the Renaissance Square. Action next to the base of Russian peacekeepers. First need commodities run out. Artsakh MPs make field visits to the regions. Christmas Mass at the Stepanakert Cathedral. The state takes care of the vulnerable families' grievances. Chartar inhabitant crosses the line of contact returning to Artsakh. Artsakh mothers perform an action at the Red Cross office. In 2022, 1,623 kids were born in Artsakh. a coupon rationing system is introduced for most commodities and food